go ahead and move into our first regular segment. Okay, like I said last week, trying to refine this a bit and minimize. I've watched a lot more than the four things I picked, and I'm gonna tweak this as I go along every week. Get kind of a standard, couple old, couple new. I've actually got 3 old and 1 new this week, and then shows versus movies. Kind of try to have some kind of standard. I don't even know if that's possible because there's so much. There's so many different things in different formats, and I like the older stuff, obviously. So we'll see. But the first one I got this week is Absolutely Anything. Are either of you familiar with this?
No.
No, I mean I recognize Simon Pegg and Kate Beckinsale and Eddie.
Yeah, this is lots of big stars in this. Yeah, obviously.
Robin Williams.
Huh?
Oh, that's the dog. Robin Williams.
Yeah. Which that was the first thing I was going to say. There's 2 things interesting about this. One, that's what I was going to say. Robin Williams plays the dog, but then 2, this is actually his last movie before he passed. This came out in 2015. I watched this on Amazon. Amazon's definitely my go. There's just so much on Amazon I enjoy, so I stick with that a lot of the time. But this is a comedy where you've heard this story before, where us as dumb humans send out a space capsule or satellite or something into space with information about ourselves and where we're located to try to make friends with any life forms that are out there, right? You've heard that story before, right?
Yeah.
And guess what? It backfires. Which I think every time that story's ever been told, it always backfires. It never works out well.
Right.
It's not like anyone goes, "Oh, this is awesome," and the aliens come and we're friends. It always is a prelude to disaster. And this really isn't very different. But like I said, it is a comedy. So there's nothing heavy going on here, but basically these intergalactic aliens, they get the info from us, and basically what they do, it's like this intergalactic empire, no Star Wars reference or anything like that, but basically what they do when they find new planets and new life forms is they test these life forms and they judge them. They have a council of the superiors, and they judge the new life forms that they've discovered to see if they're worthy to be a part of the alien republic that they're all a part of. And the way they test them is they give one life form of the life forms that they find the ability to have the power to do absolutely anything. And literally it's that. So no matter what he wants, then Simon Pegg, obviously is the main character here. I can't remember his name right now, but he's the one that the aliens give the ability to do absolutely anything. And of course, as you can imagine, again, this is kind of a redone story in a bunch of different ways over the years. He has to learn things. First he has to learn he has it, but there's no aliens that tell him. That no one talks to him. They just give it to him and see what happens. And then, like I said, they judge if they're worthy based on what this one life form does with this ability to see if they can be a part of the aliens republic. So, and Kate Beckinsale is his. He lives in an apartment. She lives in the apartment next door. He loves her. So of course, when he realizes he has powers, that's one way he gets her to date him and stuff like that. Because of course, she's better than him or whatever. And then Robin Williams as the dog, he once again to use his powers. He hates how his dog's always barking at him and making noises, and he can't understand him. So he makes his dog he makes him be able to understand his dog. So
that's a good one.
Yeah.
Because you think he'd do some nefarious things with him.
Yeah, he does. He goes through this. There's this growth,
right?
Of him learning not only. That he doesn't know he can do absolutely anything too. He just knows he can do stuff, and then he basically tests it with the absolutely anything. And then one thing I did like about this too, as he makes mistakes, he learns that since he can do absolutely anything, he can just undo his mistakes, you know? And it's kind of like the old genie story too, or the old evil genie story, I should say, where you know how they try to trick you. If you don't say something specifically right, they'll twist it to make something else happen, you know?
Right.
Like first thing, he's kind of he's not like a stud or anything, that's just how they portray his character. I'm not judging. But one thing he says, I want to have a gorgeous body. And he actually turns in his opinion, a gorgeous body is a woman. So he gives himself the body of a woman. And he's like, no, I'm a man. And then he gives himself. So there's a lot of comedic, things with all of that, which it's great. And this movie had a lot of potential, but this really felt like, and I've used this reference before, but I don't know if I've done it on any of our shows, so I'll explain a little bit. This reminds me of a Stephen King book. This was great for like 85% of it. And then it's like they didn't write it out fully or something, so they just had to then write this quick, let's end this now, kind of, at least every time, I've read or watched Stephen King movies, I get that feel, the endings just don't live up to the rest of the movie. And that's how this one was. So I didn't dislike it, but I don't really give it like a big, like to you two, you need to go watch this, if you have the opportunity and it's options you're looking for, it's not horrible, but the ending really didn't fulfill the rest of the movie for me. So it's kind of and on a scale of 1 out of 10, I'd give this like a 6.5 then, I guess. It's not
like
bad.
They kind of get bored writing it.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
They get bored writing it.
Right. Well, I feel like, with that ability, there's so much to do. I feel like they kind of were doing so good, and then
Must be done.
Yeah. So anyway, it's like I said, it's not bad. 6.5 for me. And then I got. Sorry, what'd you say, Mike?
A lot of people. Chelsea really likes in that. In addition to Simon Pegg, she's a big Eddie Izzard fan, and Joanna Lumley from Ab Fabs. She's always liked those three. Mm-hmm. So I like Rob Riggle too. He always plays sort of the doofus or the bad guy, the loud, obnoxious bad guy. But he's a pretty cool dude.
Yeah, everybody was great. Definitely all the acting was great, and the dialogue was great. Yeah, it was just the plot kind of went kaput a little bit too early. But yeah, so I definitely think, especially since you're mentioning that with Chelsea, she'd dig it too. I'm a big Simon Pegg fan. Anything that Simon Pegg's in, I want to check out. I don't know if I've watched any Simon Pegg movies I didn't like, so.
Yeah.
And then I could watch everything with Kate Beckinsale in it all day as well. But anyway, on to the next one. So I finished Jay and Silent Bob's Reboot. Again, this was a request for you, Mike, that I kind of glommed onto by Johnny.
Yeah, I keep forgetting.
Yeah, and it is, it's everything you'd expect from a Jay and Silent Bob movie, of course. This is obviously just for adults. And, recently in our Acceler group, we've talked about, gratuitous, vulgar, sexually explicit, jokes and all this, in our hobby, which I'm not a big fan for. But, I'm a big Jay and Silent Bob fan. And so you definitely should expect a lot of regular vulgarities, explicit sexual things, and regular consistent cursing, so if drug use, all of it, but I love this a lot. It's it's a star-studded cast with the typical Jay and Silent Bob co-stars, literally anybody you could think of that's ever been in any one of their movies, starting from Clerks, obviously Mallrats, Chasing Amy. They're all in this. And this is, the reboot reference in this title is a reboot of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. And it's about Blunt Man and Chronic, the characters that Jay and Silent Bob created.
Sure.
And yeah, it's a big adventure that ends at what they call a Chronicon, which obviously is very Comic-Con-ishy, but it's about Blunt Man and Chronic, and it's fun. And I love this especially, so I think you will too. Like Johnny was saying, Mike. Pat, were you ever a big Jay and Silent Bob fan, or what?
Yeah, Chelsea and I both were really. I feel like he did the when he did Zack and Miri with Seth Rogen and went total pothead. I think that's where Kevin Smith started to sort of go downhill for me.
Okay.
Not judging, but he just, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I definitely think his later stuff obviously is not as good as the earlier stuff. But what I will say about this that I thought was particularly interesting that made me like it more is, these guys are aging pretty much right along with us.
With us, right.
And so, obviously Kevin's had Harley for a long time, his daughter. But Jay has a daughter now too. But I think she's a toddler still. Isn't she really young? I think
so.
But anyway, so that's a big plot line of this movie is, I mean, spoiler alert, either one of you want to check out?
I think I kind of know what you're going to say, so it was kind of like advertised in the movie, in the hype of the movie, I think.
Okay, so Jay has a daughter he didn't know he had. So I think it's one thing I think is very interesting about this is obviously they don't watch their mouths at all, ever. But as soon as Jay realizes he's around his daughter, he starts like telling her to watch your mouth, and he starts censoring himself. His censoring is still not really censoring, but it's definitely toned down from the way he usually is, pretty much just to a lower vulgar, but it's still vulgar, So I thought it was pretty interesting. And then it has a heartwarming ending, blah, blah, blah. And just totally just ridiculous off the wall stuff. But I would say, as we're mentioning the later movies not being as good, Pat, this is probably my favorite of the last 10-year movies.
Yeah.
So I give this a good 8.
Wow.
I'd say if you're a Jay and Silent Bob fan, like a real hardcore fan, 9. So it delivers on everything, and it's got everybody, and it's got breaking the fourth wall with the audience all the time. It's good stuff. I like it a lot. So good job bringing that up, Johnny. I appreciate it. Now Mike's just got to get on it.
Yeah, I made a note.
Okay.
I mean, last night, I know this isn't what Mike watched, but last night I watched The Green Mile. That was 3 hours.
Oh yeah. Which that's awesome movie, obviously.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I watched it, but I should have watched something like this.
I actually watched every episode while I was preparing for the Whatnot show. Takes a lot of time. Setting up for that properly to make it go smoothly takes a lot of time for me. So I literally watched. This might be a little incredible to you, but I literally watched every episode of the Amazing Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends while I was setting up for the Whatnot show. And I actually sat down. I mean, I was sitting down the whole time, but I actually focused on the screen. Didn't even deal with my Whatnot show when the Origin of Firestar episode came on, which is where they got this whole ball rolling for me with the Australian Wolverine. So anyway, then moving on, I watched Tales from the Loop. This is an Amazon original show series. Either one of you familiar with this at all?
No.
Mike?
I think I may have started watching the first episode. Is there a little girl in the first episode?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's the focus. Yeah.
That's. It was like 10 minutes in, and then I don't know, crazy stuff happens, and I stopped.
Yeah, exactly. This put me in mind of Eureka, if you guys remember that old show, where it takes place in this one town where there's the main job, or what all the geniuses of the town, they all work at the Loop, and it's kind of this laboratory, the scientific laboratory that's in the middle of town, And basically this loop just messes with any rules of science and physics and just any craziness that you think could happen. Basically, this loop is the culprit of making all of this craziness happen. And for example, the first episode, well, you want to step out, Mike, if you started to watch this? Spoiler alert.
No, it was months and months ago.
So the first episode is, oh yeah, this came out in 2020. So the first episode, there's a time travel thing where this little girl, actually, everybody in her life and her house disappears, and there's this woman helping her, and then later you find out the woman is actually her. So that's and then like the second episode, we follow these two boys that are messing around in the woods, just being stupid boys, and they've come across this big circular like shed, or I don't know exactly what you call it, but when you step in there, you switch bodies with whoever's on the outside of it. So there's a whole episode of that, and so there's a full season of each episode kind of attached, but not really, kind of completely separate stories. And I liked it. The only thing I will say, it definitely gets slow in moments. Like if they could just, I don't know whether they make them slower and longer, or they're so slow to make the episodes longer or not, but I'd rather have, I think these are hour episodes. I'd rather have a half an hour of it being more eventful than they just draw out kind of everything. Like right here, perfect example in this picture. So that's the little girl from the first episode, and she meets up with this little boy. And like them meeting up in the woods and then walking to where they need to check out what's going on at the loop takes like 10 minutes. And it shows them talking about their parents or something for, nothing really that's any consequence to the episode that's unnecessary. It just draws it out, And there's also these robots that are walking around everywhere. Like this is really, in the future too, they've got robots, but they're like scout walkers from Star Wars. The ATSTs, they're on two legs with a big head. And there's all these randomly, they don't do anything with them anymore. So they're just kind of random, sporadic, like wild robots that are walking around, which I thought was pretty interesting. I don't know if they're going to do something more with that later, but I'm like 4 or 5 episodes in. I give this a cautious recommend. It's if you don't really mind slow stuff. It's definitely, when you finally get to the end, everything's kind of pretty interesting how it plays out, but it's just a little bit too slow for me to really give it a big recommend. So, but it's not bad, that's for sure. All right, and then I finally made it to the theater this weekend to see Thor: Love and Thunder. Pat, did you?
No.
Mike?
Nope. Since I've heard stuff about it, that we've decided to watch it before letting the kids watch it. We're just going to wait for it digital. So that's why we're not going to the theater.
Okay, should I start negative or positive?
Well, negative, so you can kind of lift me back up at the end, and I'm excited to see it again. Because I've not read stuff, I've seen headlines and comments, and they're all negative. So I need you to.
Okay, I'm gonna start negative, but I'm gonna lead with a positive. That, man, this isn't as bad. I know exactly what you're talking about too. With everything I've read with this too, and I feel like some people just want to be haters.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple annoying things in this. I've got one big overall that I'll tell as my negative as I start, but this isn't horrible. This isn't bad. In my humble opinion, I really don't understand where all the hate's coming from. This is not great. This isn't anywhere near, in my opinion, as good as Ragnarok, which I felt like it was trying to be Ragnarok or something. It was just like there are some over the top things, but this isn't horrible, So I don't know exactly where all the hate's coming from. So but technically my second, but the first thing I have to say, which is the biggest and the most prominent and really the only really thing I can express to you vividly that I have a problem with this is I'm not that big of a Thor fan. I've never really been a huge Thor fan, but trying to place myself in a Thor fan's head. If this was a Wolverine movie, I would be so mad. Maybe that's where a lot of the hate comes from, because Thor is totally emasculated in this movie. He's either the butt of the joke, which we've gotten a lot of that in the past, or super uber emotional, which I don't have a problem with being emotional. I'll tell you why I have a problem with all this more at the end is, so he's the butt of the joke, he's uber emotional, or he's whiny through this entire movie with maybe one or two, alpha male, masculine, bad butt, Thor that I think Thor fans want Thor to be for the most part. This confident, like I said, big masculine man that's, he wants to kick some butt and, take some names and save the world.
Right.
Yeah. So that's my biggest complaint. If this was a Wolverine movie, if they did this to my favorite character, Wolverine, the same kind of way, I would be bitter. But like I said, since I'm not a big Thor fan, it doesn't bother me that much. But it definitely stands out to me. It's like I was waiting for Thor to be the Thor that I think you got in the first 10 years of the MCU, not what you get in this movie.
Yeah.
It's just too much of a joke. It reminded me of when I saw Ghostbusters, the reboot with all the ladies. Did you guys see that?
No.
You guys haven't seen the horrible Ghostbusters?
Well, you're making me want to, though. Come on.
Somehow I own it digitally.
Me too.
I think they gave it to me. Seriously,
Maybe.
I got a Voodoo account and they said, "Here, you can have this," and I haven't watched it.
Well, I shouldn't say obviously since you guys haven't seen it. Thor's in that movie. And he's a secretary, and he's a total goof idiot in it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things among many things for that movie. But one of the things I didn't like about that movie is they really just, man, he was just the joke the entire, and it was bad because, he was kind of like representing the male gender to all males. And man, they were just like brutal to him all the time in that movie. It was tough. It was tough for me to swallow in that movie. But that's what it reminded me about with this movie. And the whole Jane Foster part of this, I think they did it as right as they could have, in my opinion, as far as they didn't just replace Thor with Jane. They kind of made Thor kind of more feminine. That's my complaint, of course. But Jane is, or Thor's just as prominent as Jane in this movie too. So that's one of my complaints when they do gender swaps, race swaps, stuff like that, is when they take somebody away and they replace that person or that character. But this, they really didn't do it. He was still the focus of it. If you've heard otherwise in the negative comments as well, which I had, she's definitely a prominent role, but she doesn't kind of take over,
Yeah.
And another thing I mentioned to Ayla about this, and I have to correct, Ayla corrected me. She says she gave this a 7.5/8. I vividly remember her saying 7, but she disagrees. So I just wanted to correct myself. But anyway, one thing I did like about Jane Foster too, and I think is missing with a lot of these, again, female focal things, projects, is she has a couple very humbling, kind of self-deprecating scenes, which I think is kind of missing in that too, which I can appreciate. That's kind of how I like to see human beings in general. Even if they're confident, they have moments of negativity upon themselves. But it seems like a lot of characters they're trying to build up, they'd never give them those moments. You know what I'm saying? Can you kind of? Yeah.
It allows them to grow as a character.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
I think you and I have talked a few times about stories like this where it seems like what they do to lift the female characters up and give them power, it's like they, emasculate the men and bring them down, and make them the butt of the jokes, and that's not necessary. You can keep the man being the alpha that he is, and Thor being as powerful as he is, and still have Jane Foster be important and powerful as well. There's no reason to do this. It could be like this. It's just, so.
Did you guys read, either one of you read the comic storyline of Jane Foster becoming Thor?
Not becoming. It's just like the tail end when Jason Aaron was wrapping up. I read a little bit that made me actually think to maybe one day go back and pick up the books, because I thought he wrote her interesting, the character. So,
what'd you say, Mike? Did you say no?
I didn't. That's when I was angry at Marvel.
No, gotcha.
For many reasons. So, I didn't buy any Marvel. And I wish I'd like to read them, like Pat said.
I was just curious as to how well they went with the story to the movie, which it seems like they did. It definitely focuses on her having cancer and Mjolnir needing to save her from that, So, but I won't go too deep into it, especially since you guys haven't seen it. But like I said, or maybe I didn't say, I give this what I thought Ayla gave it, which was a 7. Which 7 is the bad rating to me. That's another thing we discussed in my family. Where does bad start? For me, bad starts at, if you get below 6, that's where bad starts.
How was Christian Bale?
I thought he was great. I thought the I don't know anything about Gore either in the comics. I thought the way they introduced him too was really good, actually. I was, as you can imagine, like you said, with all the comments we've read, I went in this kind of negative. And the very first scene of this was, I really, for lack of a better way to describe it, enjoyed it a lot. It's not a good thing, but it was moving and kind of set up Gore, So I thought Christian Bale did good. Yeah. Mm. And the Guardians of the Galaxies are a lot are in this a lot less than I thought they would be. It's like real brief, And then the last thing I will say too, that I just thought of this while I was talking, is there's literally like probably 5 or 6 moments in this movie that I laughed out loud, like literally laughed out loud. And I went early on Saturday, so it was like nobody in the theater. So, but I was like laughing out loud to myself.
So, was it too much humor? Like I'm seeing some articles being posted.
Yeah. I think a lot of it was, I would say too much. Yeah. And especially because most of the time Thor is the butt of the humor, But there is definitely moments that are just like, I'm just going to tell you one. This isn't like a big spoiler, but I guess it could be construed as that. But the goats, right? Whenever they fly or have any interaction, they're screaming that like this, ear wrenching, like scream of, if you had a man or woman and they were out just getting ready to be hacksawed by Jason or something, the scream that you'd get from that is what these goats do constantly, which is pretty hilarious to me. And there's a couple funny moments with Russell Crowe. Although I don't like to see one of my heroes, which Russell Crowe is, I use that term loosely, but Gladiator, I love Gladiator so much. I still say that's probably my favorite movie of all time that isn't sci-fi nerd stuff. But man, he's definitely out of shape, and he's Zeus. He could have worked out a bit before they made this.
He's been out of shape for quite a few years.
Yeah, he has. Yeah. Oh, that's something I want to mention about this too. With getting back to James and Bob before I stop here real quick. Are you guys familiar with Val Kilmer's situation?
Yeah.
Okay. So he's in this. as Blunt Man.
Oh,
Yeah, Blunt Man. Blunt Man. Silent Bob is Blunt Man, right? Yeah,
I think so.
yeah. So he does. Of course, he doesn't talk, so it's perfect.
right.
About
Val Kilmer, yeah. Years ago, Patrick, you might remember these. I had Blunt Man Chronic action figures, and I had Jay and Silent Bob action figures. And the Bob figure, they took batteries and you push a button and it'd say things. But the Silent Bob figure, you press a button and nothing, you didn't say anything. I think it's
So anyway, yeah, I wish you guys had seen this too, because I got a few other things to say, but I don't want to spoil it for y'all. But overall, it's nowhere near as bad as what I've read, and to answer that too, Mike, you didn't ask me, but to respond to what you said about taking the kids to see this,
yeah,
you know me, I honestly, I think I feel a little bit more conservative in these kind of things than you do on occasion, and I wouldn't have any problem taking Cora and Mark to this. I can't really think of anything would be bad, seriously. Which I would have thought completely differently based on everything I've read. But seriously, after seeing it, there's nothing that I can think that unless you care about them seeing Chris's butt, which you probably heard about that, right? Have you heard that?
Yeah, that's one of them.
Yeah, that's the only part. And it's real short. It's a 1 second. His butt's on the screen. That's it. And when it's coming, of course.
Yeah.
So aside from that, I literally can't think of anything else that they couldn't watch. I mean, it really is pretty safe in my opinion. So I can't wait till you watch it someday. If you wait till digital, so you can tell me how wrong or right I was on that.
Yeah. Right.
All right. So that'll do it for me.